name is Melodie Bissell, and once again, I want to welcome you to listening into the Plan to Protect podcast. We have the privilege today of having a guest who I want you to hear her story. Lily is a very good friend of mine. I've actually known Lily probably for about 45, almost 50 years now. Lily lost all of her savings recently when she fell prey to financial scam online. And today we're going to be talking specifically about elder abuse. And Lily found herself as a victim of elder abuse. Lily is facing eviction and the need to move to subsidized housing. Lily will share with listeners today how she was duped and the interaction that she had with those who robbed her of tens of thousands of dollars. We will also discuss the impact of this type of abuse that it has had on her and others who have found themselves in the same position. You really won't want to miss this whole podcast. Lily, I am beyond honored to have you be part of this podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mel, for having me. And yes, it's been probably 45 to 50 years. I haven't worked it out, a friendship, and it's just been wonderful to have you in my life. Thank you for having me.
We know each other really well. So when I heard of what Lily has just faced, it just literally broke my heart. Lily, before we get into your story of abuse, please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and who you are, other than one of my closest friends.
Yes, and that I am. As I was thinking about who am I often would ask clients that as a statement because sometimes they lose sight of who they are. And an I am statement is really important. And I started jotting down actually just today some of my interests. And I've been retired now for 7 years. And the last couple of years have been rough physically. I had a hip operation that didn't go well. And my mobility is not as good as I want it to be. I'm working on it. So a lot of things have changed. I love to garden, which is one of the things that has changed over the last couple of years. And now that I've moved into an apartment, I've been doing some balcony gardening. And because I couldn't actually get out onto the balcony, my friend brought the pots and things close to the door so I could water them and see my flowers, which was a real gift from another friend. And I love being out in nature. I love animals. I love God's beauty. I love being in the woods. I love smelling the leaves on the trees and the change of seasons. I love animals, and I have a cat, and that cat is really precious to me. It was a rescue cat who is really shy and nobody sees. They see it as a lump on my bed, and they know from pictures that I actually do have a cat, and he is very affectionate to me, but is like a ghost to everybody else. And one of the other things I was doing yesterday actually was making a soup that I like to watch cooking shows. And one of the chefs he's French, and he was making a knockoff on a Olive Garden soup. And I thought I would try it yesterday, and I had it for supper last night. So one of my interests is cooking. And not the cleanup, but the cooking part. Or one thing else is that I love to travel. And again, it's been curtailed because of my disability at the moment, and also because of what has just happened to me.
Lily, I don't think you told us, but Lily retired from being a licensed therapist. So Lily is a counselor and has been instrumental in many people's lives, even my life, as I've gone through some difficult situations. Lily has been helpful to me. So Lily retired from being a counselor. So we are actually doing this podcast without the camera on. And I know normally you see us on camera. So if you don't see us on camera, that is on purpose. We want to protect Lily's privacy. And we just really want to honor Lily in this interview. Lily and I, as I said, we've known each other for 50 years or close to that, which is crazy long. A few weeks ago, Lily reached out to me and told me she had lost everything from a scam, but that you weren't ready yet to talk about it. She said, just know that I've gone through a difficult thing. I've lost all my life savings and I can't talk about it. Thankfully, Lily is willing to share with us today about her experience. Lily, can you share why you weren't ready at that point to talk about what happened, and why you're willing to talk about it today?
It's been a couple of months since, which we'll get into later, but that I actually realized that this was a scam that I was involved in. And it really, I was so raw from emotion. It just seemed unbelievable that this had happened, that I couldn't really talk about it to anybody. I have since talked to a few selected friends. It's not widely known, but I was encouraged, actually, Melodie, just before you got in touch with me, that a friend said I should not feel ashamed that I was a victim and that I should tell my story. And Melodie got a hold of me. So I think God was working that I need to step out of my comfort zone at this point and tell my story.
I think some of the words you used is, either shock, and I think other people would feel this can't be true. This couldn't have been a scam. I hardly even believing that this happened to you. And I know even when you told me what happened, I felt really raw and I literally broke into tears. And I felt anger, like real anger, that someone would take advantage of someone that I cared so much about. So I think that this kind of abuse and harm does leave one shocked, feeling denial, shame, also probably fear, because of the personal information they have on you, and whether that be embarrassment or literally traumatized by something like that. So it's amazing that you're bouncing back so quickly, willing to tell you.
Right. I felt all those emotions, and anger was on top, was denial probably was the first emotion, and anger was the one that came second, and shame and embarrassment. I was so angry. I was angry at me. I was angry at him and what he purposely did to me because he targeted me.
The reason I started off with asking you who you were, Lily, was because you were really intelligent. Like, you went after education. You are computer savvy. Like, not many people our age are computer savvy. I'm pretty computer savvy. You are very computer savvy. So that whole idea of denial and shock and could this actually happen to you is hard to understand, but it does happen. And so many people, very intelligent people like yourself, fall prey to that. So please don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel shame, because people who prey on seniors are very savvy and they know exactly the buttons to push. So take us back 4 to 6 months ago. How did this all begin?
Well, it was in October. I saw an ad on Facebook, and it was Mr. Singh, the leader of the NDP party, that had an ad, and he was advertising for Canadians to become involved in investing in oil. And I thought, well, that's probably a good investment, And so I responded to the ad. And I was told that somebody would call me the following day. And so this man who identified himself as Richard called me And he started to talk to me about investments, about oil and natural gas and crude oil and commodities, corn and coffee, how the wars in the world affect commodity prices. And we hear that on the news all the time. And so, I agreed with him. He outlined what he thought he would like to invest in, those kinds of things for me, and he could see me getting a profit. He suggested $7,000 to $8,000 could give me a return of about $2,000 a month, which is exactly what I had told him I needed, that I was taking from my savings account. And so he talked about the risk factors in terms of when he would sell commodity, that 7 out of 10 would be profitable. If it wasn't, he would pull it off and add another commodity to help with the portfolio. So he told me also that he collected a 7% commission once I withdrew the money. So that's what his salary would be. So he asked me to deposit a little bit into the account, and he would show me how easy it was to take the money from the account with him and deposit it into my account. And so I did that, and I can't remember exactly how much I invested at that point, but I do remember that he easily sent back into my account $132. So it's, I thought, well, that was easy. Everything ran really smoothly. So in December, I deposited some money. Again, I don't remember exactly the amount, into the trading account. He traded. I watched online. He had an online web tracker that showed me my profits and losses and how things were going. And I was really impressed. I was doing really, really well. And then in December, he said that Bitcoin was going to skyrocket, and that he really suggested I put my money into Bitcoin and I could really see some profits. So I did. And during this time, he called me daily. He checked in with me, asked me how I was doing. I had a cold. He told me to have ginger tea, rest up, go see the doctor. Very compassionate man. Seemed very, very interested in my life. And because I was wanting to lose weight, we talked about the Mediterranean diet because his wife was from the Mediterranean, and all sorts of personal information that just made it like we were almost friends. He just really made an impression on me, that I liked him a lot. So I started to invest money into the Bitcoin account. And he then started saying, you could top it up by asking friends or taking a loan out, because it was doing so well, like the profits will just be incredible. I was leery about doing that. I couldn't get a loan from the bank. I knew that. And I certainly didn't want to ask friends for money to put into my account. So that seemed odd, that a financial advisor, which is what he called himself, would ask that kind of question, request. But nevertheless, I continued. And then about mid-December, I think it was, he said that he had a very wealthy client who had reached his limit, and I didn't understand it, and I still don't understand what that meant, but he said he had talked to this client and suggested he send me money for crypto. And so I agreed to it, even though I didn't understand it. And so he sent me $50,000, like it was in my account the next day. I was just so amazed, because usually wire transfers take at least 5 days by the time it goes through the fraud department and stuff. But it was in my account the next day. So then I tried to withdraw the money that he had sent me for crypto, and my bank wouldn't allow it. They said it was fraud, and they put a stop to the wire. So I was in a real difficult position, because this was not my money. And so I didn't really know what to do. So Richard said that he was getting pretty angry. It was getting towards Christmas time. And the man was getting really angry because I hadn't returned the money and I hadn't been able to send the money for him to buy crypto. And that he would sue me if he didn't get his money back. So this really upset me. And so I went to the bank and I asked the bank for cash. And now, for those who don't know, if you withdraw, I think more than $5,000 or 10,000, they have to get it. They don't have it at the bank, so it takes several days to get the money to get to the bank to get to you. And so, because of the holidays and the bank holidays, they weren't able to get the money to me before the new year. And this man had demanded his money by the end of December. So again, this really upset me because they didn't really know what to do about my dilemma, because I wanted to return this money to him, but I was being forced to keep it. And so the teller went to the bank manager, and the bank manager called me into his office, and he said it was fraud. He didn't want to do this. And I told him my story, that, you know, it wasn't my money, it was his, and I needed to return it to him. So he reluctantly made out a bank draft, which I then took to the Bank of Nova Scotia, which is this man's account. So lots had happened in between with the bank and I during all of this process, and with different organizations that were tied to Richard. And I won't go into that because the story gets really long and involved. But Richard then said that crypto was going to be really high by the end of December, and he would make arrangements for me to get my money January 2nd. So come the new year, January 2nd came around and I didn't hear from him. And the days went on, I didn't hear from him. This was a change in behavior because, as I said earlier, Richard had been in touch with me every single day, and sometimes multiple times. And so for him to ghost me and not respond to me or call me, I started to wonder what was up. And in the meantime, I needed my car to be fixed, and so had to take it to the dealership. And I literally begged him for money to pay the car repair. Still no response from him. Eventually, he did respond and say that he had sent my ticket, as he called it, to the finance department, and that there were hundreds of people in front of me wanting their money because of the new year, and pretty much that I had to be patient for it. So at least a week went on before I heard anything, still trying to get in touch with him, trying to get at least some money because it was now into January, needed the $2,000 for my expenses, which he knew, and which was still not forthcoming. It took a long time for him to start to communicate again, very, very rarely with me after the December, talking to me every single day.
Wow. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. What began to convince you that this was not a real offering? Was it the bank when, like, did you believe the bank when they told you they felt this was fraud?
No, I didn't. I did. I argued with them. I was so sure that this was legitimate. I argued with them. And actually, I put in 2 complaints to my bank that they were withholding my money and that they weren't in good communication with me. And I finally got a hold of a lady who told me about A1 and some of the crypto fraud that was going on out there. And it started to make me think that maybe this was true, since I hadn't really heard from Richard. And that I was talking to a friend who knew I had invested, because I was so excited about, why doesn't everybody do this? And I had been interested in Bitcoin for years and years. Like, this was not new. So it was just a natural for me to say yes. Like I had an exchange all set up years ago to do this. So she asked me how the investment was going. So I was telling her my situation. This was just after the new year. And she said, I think you should get in touch with the police. And so I started thinking, yeah, I think I may have been caught up in a scam.
So going back to earlier in the story, you said the advertisement on Facebook was Mr. Singh. Do you think it really was Mr. Singh, or do you think that was just part of AI? And
was AI manipulated? It was his picture. I don't know what he sounds like, so I don't know if it was his voice. I've heard since then they've used Trudeau and apparently had an Australian accent. So that would be a giveaway. But they've used people's picture and they have used AI to manipulate the speech. And so be really careful. Yeah.
So how did they interact with you? I know you mentioned Richard. Was it just one person or many individuals?
Initially, it was Richard, and he has an assistant named Alan. And he said Alan would be watching. He also used WhatsApp. So he gave me a WhatsApp, and I could WhatsApp him anytime. And if Richard was busy, Alan would respond. Or there was at times, supposedly, when Richard wasn't available. So Richard asked Alan to get in touch with me to see if everything was okay and did I have any questions. So very thorough in keeping track, the two of them. It wasn't until later when I was adamant about withdrawing my money. He said that somebody in the finance department would be in touch with me. So then a third party came involved. That's a whole nother story about him. So there was a third party. Also, during this whole thing from October to November, there were several, because the bank started to say that there was fraud, and Richard would said, well, we'll show them that it's not fraud when you get your money back. And I know how banks work, and it's senior ageism against seniors, and they don't want you to withdraw your money. Yes, the bank does not want you to withdraw the money. They use your money. So he was right there. But, he just had a way of working around everything. So there were organizations. There was an organization that he had me use my identity with my driver's license, and they interviewed me, which is what a true exchange should do. So if anybody gets into this and they set up exchanges that don't do this, then you may want to think twice about it. There were several organizations, and I don't know whether they're fraudulent or not, but there were places that just seemed really odd names that he wanted me to wire my money to that wouldn't question it like the bank does.
So you reported this to the police after your friend encouraged you to report it. What did they say? What have they done on your behalf?
The police, as soon as I called them, because there's a general fraud line, as soon as I called them, they transferred me over because of the amount of money that I supposedly lost. I was saying to the police that I suspected fraud. I didn't call it fraud because I was still in denial. Like even after all this, I was still in denial. So I told them that it was possibly fraud. And so one of the intake officers started taking a history, collecting all of my deposits, all of my wires, documents on what I knew of these people, how many people were involved, and I suspect that they're in just outside of London. Richard has a French accent, the others have British accents, and you can't believe anything Richard says now, but he said he was just outside of London. He said at one point that he was taking his family over to see his family in France for the weekend. And I thought, well, how is he doing that? Well, if you're in England, pretty easy to jump over to France for the weekend. So I suspect that that's where he is. So the police I took all the information from the exchange, all the wallet numbers. They tracked my wallet numbers to the exchange. The exchange is not Canadian. The police did not tell me where it was, but that they didn't have jurisdiction with this exchange. They've known of this exchange before and had no luck getting the name of the account holder. And I've been praying that the exchange, whoever's in charge, that their heart would be softened and reveal the name of the account holder, because they know where my money is. So I did ask the police. I asked if there was any way of getting the police in England involved. The police here said we don't have enough information yet as to who these people are. So if we are able to identify it, then Interpol will become involved to go across the seas. So they told me not to hold my breath in terms of getting the money back from crypto, that they may get the money back from the deposits. I don't know if the man that gave me the $50,000 and I returned it to him is fraudulent or if he's another victim. We don't know that. And so the police will have to find out about him, and hopefully I can get some money back, but probably not.
Are the police keeping you up to date on what they're discovering?
Not for a couple of weeks now. When the so-called finance man was, because I was stringing him along, because by this time I was quite sure that it was fraud, but I was still working on getting my money back. And when he became involved, then I reported him to the police. And the police told me that they had passed my case on to a Bitcoin police officer who dealt with Bitcoin fraud. And I was in queue for my case to get to him, but there were people in front of me. So that's the last I heard a couple of weeks ago.
So am I correct? You lost, like you had said, that your initial investment was $7,000 or $8,000. Am I correct that you've lost significantly more than that?
Oh, yes.
What impact? Where has this left you? Like, what's the impact on this? How has it impacted you financially, physically, emotionally, etc.?
It's impacted me all those ways. I even wrote, maybe a little vindictively, to Richard, and said I hope he was happy that he'd left me homeless, because again, he knows my circumstances. He knows I need the money. He did it deliberately, knowing this. Yeah, as of today, I have until June to move from my apartment because I can't afford the rent here. I've applied for housing in my city, and there's an 8.5-year waiting list. I've applied to co-ops, and there's no vacancies. I've applied to nonprofit housing, and there is one that's church-related that has a few people ahead of me, and more than likely that is where I will end up. But something has to happen to someone. Either they've died or they have to be moved to long-term care, or something has to happen for people to move out of that situation, for people like me to move in. So I'm looking into, I don't think that will happen by June. So I'm looking into hotels either this week, depending on the weather, and or next week, that offer extended days to students. And I'm hoping that they might have compassion on me and can get into a room that has a kitchenette that I can cook my own meals and don't have to go to restaurants or whatever to feed myself. Emotionally, yeah, it's left me drained. I need to downsize my 2-bedroom apartment to fit into a 1-bedroom. So I've started that, shredding and making piles for thrift stores and such. Physically, I have a problem anyway with tiredness, and it just has zapped my energy. So it has affected me totally. Yeah.
Wow. I'm sure it's also impacted you where it's hard to trust people,
Very much.
and so just knowing the amount of information they have on you, it's honestly heartbreaking to know that they target seniors and elderly. I mean, they target everybody, but they're certainly target the vulnerable, especially in your case, you don't have family members, that you would bounce this off of over a kitchen table. You're single, so it's not like you can talk to a spouse about this or children about this. So I do think they really target the elderly and singles, people who would be deemed vulnerable in situations like this.
Yeah, the trust level is zero probably at this point.
Not looking at those Facebook ads, eh?
That is for sure. Anybody stay away from any ads,
Yeah.
anything that you don't know about. Just stay away from it. This AI is so good. The scammers are so smart, you know. And you said before that I had good computer skills, and Richard set up an exchange and he took over my computer. So he then could see everything on my laptop, which when the finance guy got involved, he wanted to do the same. And I said, no, I preferred to try to do it myself. And he said, well, Richard said you don't have very good computer skills. So, which I tend to say I don't either, but the trust level, like don't trust anyone. If you don't know them for a long time, which is what the bank says, how long have you known this person? And I did not want to say because I really believed in this guy, and I really thought the bank was holding me hostage with my money, that I couldn't invest it where I wanted to invest. So I was quite adamant with them that it was not fraud. So, I've had to confess that to God, that, my stubbornness is partly what got me here.
I recently did an investigation on elder abuse, and it was both sexual and emotional abuse. And later we learned that it was also financial abuse. And this was someone that she didn't know, that she had known for 2 years, but she did not have strong computer skills, didn't know much about the computer at all. And she allowed someone who she knew well to come into her house, to go onto her computer, to clean up her computer. This individual also accessed a lot of her financial information from her computer, actually triggered her camera. She didn't know that that little green light or whatever colored light on your computer means that you're on web camera. He literally installed a web camera on her computer, and her computer was in her bedroom. So he would literally turn on her computer, her web camera, and have access to voyeurism on her computer. And she too was in similar to your situation. She had mobility issues. She had neurological issues and disabilities. And he took her money and also sexually and emotionally abused her. And again, it's taking advantage of people who are vulnerable and people who are alone. So, Lily, you were a counselor. You had people coming to you with heartbreak, trauma, difficult life experiences. And here you find yourself in a similar situation, dealing with trauma in your own life experience. What counsel would you give to someone who is coming out of elder abuse, whether it be financial or other form of abuse? What counsel would you give to those individuals that find themselves in the same situation that you're in?
I think one of the things I found in counseling abuse victims, not this type, but other types of abuse, is that they need to have somebody hear their story. They need someone to understand what it has been like for them to go through what they've gone through. I think as a counselor, and I had a friend just say this the other day, because she'd been in for counseling, that she could talk to a wall for all the counselor did, because she just talked. So just talking isn't enough for a lot of people. They need feedback, they need reassurance, they need empathy. They need to know that they're not a bad person. They need to know there's others in their situation so that they don't think that they are alone in these circumstances. You need to be compassionate. They're already beating themselves up for what has happened to them and their part in their circumstances. If, like not knowing computer skills, or for me, just being stubborn and stupid, in following this guy and liking him and falling for his charisma. Yeah, people need to tell their stories. And so I think some people just need to vent and they don't want to hear any feedback. Other people want some feedback. In these kinds of circumstances, ask them, have you been to the police like my friend did? I didn't want to go to the police. I didn't want this to be fraud. I didn't want to be humiliated. And the police were very gentle with me and very empathetic, so make the report. Let's stop this abuse going on. Yeah, and just ask them if there's anything in a practical sense that they can do for them. You don't know what each person's life is like, and maybe there's some little way that they can be helpful. A friend at church on Sunday said, they just live in the other apartment building. He said, we're here for you. If you need anything, you just let us know. Well, I may need some help putting things in the car to take to the thrift store. You just don't know what people need. So ask the question.
I love that. And many of the suggestions you're giving is exactly what I would say is the kind of care we can provide to victims of abuse, whatever that form of abuse is, whether it's just be present in their life. Don't rob them of their agency, because they've already been abused and their agency has already been taken from them. So don't take away their agency, but just be present in their life and help them as they need help, but don't try to force your help on them, because as you said, you already have lost trust and faith. So you don't want people to start trying to control you, because you're a very independent person still at this point in your life. I don't think they can make that report for you to the police, but they can be certainly there present when you do make the report. And I think that would be helpful to people, is just even to have someone there present if you're making the report. So great suggestions. So Lily, what happens now? How do you pick up the pieces from this and move on? I know, and I always say, don't try to push people to move on. Like, you can't push people to move on. You have to go through those stages of grief. But where are you at now?
Yeah, I'm still grieving, still angry, still praying that God would speak to these men. God's the God of miracles, and I'm asking him for miracles. I'm asking for a change of heart for these men that I've come in contact with, and for the exchange. Just in the practical sense, getting ready to move, looking for a place to live. That is uppermost in my mind. I still rehash, the story. I haven't quite worked out it enough to even think that this is possible, this has happened. I'm still a little bit in denial. Yeah, so moving on, I think, is just really practical right now, as well as mending physically, emotionally, and trusting God.
I'm so, so sorry this happened to you. I deal with the topic of abuse prevention all the time, and I'm trying to win the race against abuse. And I hear stories like this, and I just realize how much more we have to do at raising awareness of abuse, and certainly elder abuse and financial abuse. Do you have anything else you would want to add to the conversation, or you'd want the listeners to know?
Yeah, I think through my story, people have hopefully gleaned what they should and shouldn't do, but just be very, very careful. Even as you said, like somebody if they're getting controlling, if they're taking control of your computer, don't use, and the police had asked me this, did he ask to use any desk? And he did, and he did use it to set up several exchanges, actually. So don't have anybody take over your computer. Go to a reputable store if you need work done. Just don't respond to any ads, any Facebook ads, any emails, any solicitations, any letters. Don't respond to them. Just be really, really careful.
It took you so much courage to tell your story today. And I just want to really thank you for that. I am really hoping and praying that you'll be able to pick up the pieces of your life. And I'm so grateful that you have a support network around you of friends. And I know they care for you. We all do. And we hate to see you suffer any more than you already have. I am so grateful. I just want to do a big shout out here to the Canadian government because they're really concerned about elder abuse and fraud and what is happening in our country around elder abuse. And they have invested millions of dollars to help raise awareness of elder abuse and fraud. And they are even sponsoring this podcast today. And not-for-profits and charities and businesses can even apply for the New Horizons grant proposal. And here at Plan to Protect, we also have the opportunity of providing elder abuse awareness kits so that you can do seminars within your community, whether it be a church or a community group, and you can hold elder abuse awareness seminars. Please point people to this podcast because I can talk a lot about elder abuse awareness, and I can talk a lot about how to prevent it and tips to protect yourself. But hearing stories from like Lily's story, this is real. This is happening. And I'm so grateful that our government is willing to invest in raising awareness and the prevention of elder abuse. So again, Lily, we're coming to the close of our podcast. Thank you so much for telling us your story and having the courage to share the details of your story with us. And I personally pray that somehow this will be redeemed in your life.
Thank you, Mel.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.